Let's continue to look at the book of Galatians by going to chapter 4, verses 21 through 24. It's a long section that Paul has here, and we're going to break this down over a couple devotions. Verse 21, it says, "Tell me, you who desire to be under the law, do you not listen to the law? For it was written that Abraham had two sons, one by a slave woman and one by a free woman. But the son of the slave was born according to the flesh, while the son of the free woman was born through promise. Now this may be interpreted allegorically. These women are two covenants." It seems that very often children may take on the characteristics and direction of their parents. In my life, my dad was the chief of design for a company that built steam turbines. Upon graduation from high school, I pursued a degree in mechanical engineering. My dad served in the United States Army during World War II, the tail end of that war. I enrolled in the Army ROTC program at college and received a commission in the Army at the tail end of the Vietnam conflict. I left the service and began a career in engineering and manufacturing, following in my dad's footsteps. In fact, the only departure I had from my dad's career path was that some years after the Lord saved me, he called me to the pastoral ministry. The point is this: very often, people are born into a position in life and continue in that line throughout life. Around the world, we see caste systems, and some people born of professional status move into professional fields. Some born in poverty remain in poverty. Some born in homes where drugs and alcohol are abused fall into the same trap. Yes, there are exceptions. I'm one. I was born in a home with no real focus on Christ and the church, who experienced salvation at the age of 32 and became an active servant in the church and eventually entered the pastorate. And here in this section of the letter to the Galatians, Paul continues his thought on the perplexing situation in which he saw the Galatians. He began this section with these strong words, "Tell me, you who desire to be under the law, do you not listen to the law?" He then moved to give them an explanation from the Old Testament. And to understand this section, it's going to take some time, like I already mentioned, more than I can cover in one short devotional, so I will take a few of these devotions to go through this passage. The first thing that we need to understand is seen in this verse number 24, when Paul wrote, "Now this may be interpreted allegorically." Paul presented an allegorical argument. The English word allegory is a transliteration of the Greek word allegoria. It refers to speaking in other words or different words. It presents a symbolic representation of something to reveal a concept or a truth. And here Paul used the contrast between two sons of Abraham. One was Ishmael, who was born of Hagar, Abraham's slave or servant woman. The other was Isaac, who was born of Sarah, Abraham's wife. These two lineages and these two women allegorically represent two different covenants. One is a covenant under the promise, and the other allegorically represented that under the law. Now God had promised Abraham a son through whom all the nations of the earth would be blessed. We know, as believers, that this seed is the seed of Abraham, refers to Jesus. Yet this was to happen through Sarah by giving birth to a son of Abraham. And even though she was advanced in years and barren, God moved to bless them with a son who they named Isaac. Unfortunately, prior to the birth of Isaac, fleshly impotence got the better of Abraham and Sarah, and they made a decision for Abraham to have a child through the slave woman Hagar. This child was named Ishmael. Hagar and her son Ishmael represent the lineage of slavery, that is bondage. And this referred to those who were under the law and slaves to it. In contrast, the union of Abraham with his wife Sarah was according to the promise and represents the lineage of freedom and those set free from bondage to the law. Here again, Paul is referring to the promise, which is freedom, and the law, which represented slavery. His point to the Galatians, let me rephrase that again. Here, Paul is referring to the promise, which is freedom, and the law, which represented slavery. His point to the Galatians is that faith in Jesus sets them under a better covenant, one that is of the promise. This is in contrast to the law, allegorically represented by the slave woman and her son. The big point of all this is that believers have a great heritage. We have been set free. And having such freedom under the new covenant, why would any of us ever want to move back to or into slavery? Now we're going to continue with this allegorical argument, looking at it in the next 2 devotions. But think about this. We're no longer in bondage as believers. We've been set free. And we need to enjoy our freedom that we have in Christ.